because he is on his way to Phoenix. Let's show you the details of that trade. You can see them on your screen. The Suns, they received Kevin Durant, TJ Warren, and the Nets, they received Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Jay Crowder, 4 first-round picks, a 2028 pick swap. Bridges, that's a haul.
That's good for them. Good for them.
Good for them. We're going to get to a little bit more reaction from our panel in just a second, but I want to start by bringing in the man who broke the news, senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj, how did this KD trade come together?
Malika, I think the drumbeat to that trade started with Kyrie Irving's trade request in Brooklyn and then his move to Dallas. And I think once that happened, I think Kevin Durant looked around there and just did not, in his mind, see a way forward, have a real desire to remain. He wanted to be in Phoenix, and his timing was pretty fortuitous. Matisheba had just been approved by the league as the new governor of the Suns, and he was aggressive over the course of several days in conversations with Joe Tsai, the Nets owner, and then his front office with Sean Marks and James Jones, his GM. And it culminated late last night, really almost at a crossroads where Phoenix thought they may not be able to get a deal done with the Nets, that they weren't going to meet their price, and started to pivot toward a possible 3-way deal that may have landed them John Collins. But they checked back again with the Nets last night, and then relatively quickly they got to the deal. You just laid out the players, the picks. I think ultimately, Brooklyn still spent time last week trying to convince Kevin Durant that there was a way forward as a contender. You looked at what they got back in the Kyrie Irving trade, Spencer Dinwiddie, Finney Smith, and they were trying to do more. While they were still talking to the Suns, and as that built over the week, the Nets were still talking with Toronto about their forwards. They were talking with Atlanta on Collins, any number of players around the league to try to see if they could bring something to Durant that would, try to tether him to the organization. Durant stayed steadfast that he preferred to be moved. I think Brooklyn reached a point late last night, ownership, front office, where they simply said there was an inevitability, about Kevin Durant leaving, whether it was after the season or last night. They had to pick a package built around Mikal Bridges, a player they really value, that it was time to move off of Durant. Not an easy decision. This is, as good of a player as there is on this planet. They kept fighting to try to find ways to make it work. But ultimately, I think Matisheba's aggression in being willing to pay the price, the asking price of the Nets, ultimately got this done.
I got to tell you, Woj, when you broke that news overnight, I was, oh my gosh, I can't go to bed now. This is insane. But now we're under 2 hours away from the trade deadline. So as we march toward that time, what else are we keeping an eye on? What's going on?
Well, certainly the Nets are still a team to watch. They've already rerouted Jay Crowder. He's going to the Bucks. The Bucks had worked really months to try to get Jay Crowder in Milwaukee. And they've done that, and they've had to move out several second-round picks. They've moved out some veteran contracts into some contract space in Indiana, including just moments ago, George Hill, Serge Ibaka are on their way to the Pacers, into the space they have, for a number of second-round picks. And so I think Brooklyn is going to continue to listen here up until the deadline. And listen, they've got to chart a course here. They're not motivated to be bad, to get down in the lottery. Houston still holds future first-round picks they have from the James Harden trade. And so, I think, again, the Nets, Toronto, OG Anunoby, who they have canvassed the league on in Toronto. There's tremendous interest in him. It's just a position and a kind of player around the league that has value for almost everyone. What I think Toronto's interested to see today is, does the addition of Kevin Durant in the Western Conference maybe escalate the asking price for Anunoby? They're going to have players to guard Kevin Durant, the other big wings out west. So Toronto may still yet just stand pat and go into the offseason, reshaping this roster then. But I think, listen, there's still a lot of action around this league today. Atlanta continues to try to find a home for John Collins. And listen, I think they had some thoughts last night that they may be able to get to a deal with Phoenix. But when Phoenix pivoted back to Kevin Durant and Utah, another team that had interest, they moved on, did that big 3-team trade yesterday. So, Atlanta is left still trying to figure out if there's a deadline deal to do with John Collins, or do they just bring him back and deal with this in the offseason?
Woj, thank you. We know you're busy. We will not keep you. We'll see you a little bit later. Kevin freaking Durant.
That was the text.
That was the text that I sent our group text last night. I said, Kevin Durant is on the move to Phoenix. Richard, your thoughts?
One, James Jones. Congratulations, champ. James Jones, what you've done there in the last few years, and obviously you have a new ownership. This move, and when I look at when James Jones has taken over, the construction, who they have added, and now they legitimately have, look, I know Chris Paul is on the outside, looking in of the big three, but I think Kevin Durant gives you like 1.5. Devin Booker is a big 1, right? So now you got a big 3, because I'm going to count KD as 1.5. So now I'm very curious. They don't have a ton of depth in Phoenix, but they do have the building blocks, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this West turns out.
Zach?
Let's not beat around the bush. This is you have to win the championship trade, or else it's just not going to work, because in all the excitement over Durant going to Phoenix, and there should be excited, he's been the best player in the NBA this season when healthy. They traded 3 really good players, although Jay Crowder was no longer a player for their team, and all their draft picks in perpetuity. And if you look at the history of those trades, you either win the championship like the Lakers did, or like the Bucks did, or you end up feeling some pain in the end. Kevin Durant's 34, coming off an injury. Chris Paul's 37, kind of having a down year, looks good now. This team probably just made itself the favorite to win the title.
Yep.
You pay a hefty price for that. You pay a hefty price for the best player in the league. But there's a downside risk here that is very big, and those Phoenix picks out in the distance could end up being very valuable for the Nets, who recouped a lot of what they lost. We'll talk about what this era was for the Nets. But the Suns, this is a win-the-title trade. 34, 37 years old. Go win the title.
Absolutely. First, Zach, that Kevin Durant haven't been the best player this season. It's Giannis Antetokounmpo. I'm going to keep reminding you of that. Secondly, they shouldn't be the favorites. I think that they are a title contender, but can we please, just in the Western Conference, start to put respect on the Denver Nuggets name even more? Like, when you look at their roster, in my opinion, how deep they are, they're the same as the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference as far as their depth. When you look at Aaron Gordon, you look at Bruce Brown, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., when you look at all those guys and what they have, and then they just added Thomas Bryant, I'm looking at this situation right now, and yes, Phoenix should be in the conversation, but they shouldn't be the favorite. And I think that losing Mikal Bridges, and I know they had to give him up, but he was so vital and he's so key, being that perimeter defender. They have to find a way to replace that.
And that tweet was hilarious, Mikal. That was funny looking at that. In the middle of everything. He was just like, oh my God. LOL.
Oh my God, LOL. I think
LOL.
his face video was like,
So my take on this, I believe that in the world of analytics, which basketball is really dominated by right now, the Phoenix Suns, right, by acquiring Kevin Durant, are the absolute exception. And I'll say this because they just acquired the greatest mid-range scorer that the game has seen in Kevin Durant, being 7 foot, averaging 30 points per game, primarily doing his damage in the mid-range. And then you're pairing that with another up-and-coming great mid-range shooter in Devin Booker. And yes, there are a lot of question marks because the two things that have derailed their campaigns to be first-team All-NBA are injuries so far this year. And I have MVP, if KD stayed healthy, him earning that. But big picture, you have two scenarios where you have two amazing offensive firepower between that duo. And then, yes, Chris Paul, older, but now imagine the game just got so simple for him because this is like a point guard's heaven.
Yes.
And so, yes, they put all of their chips in the middle of the table, but I think that's rightfully so for someone of Kevin Durant's caliber.
Well, and anybody that wants to question, okay, the Suns, they gave up a lot of depth, right? They were already kind of teetering a little bit, especially without Jay Crowder. They gave up depth. Watch for the Phoenix Suns. Every year when we talk about the buyout market, remember last year we were laughing about that, Perk? When you talk about the buyout market, the Phoenix Suns are going to be a team that if you're a veteran and you get bought out, you're like, oh, I can go to Phoenix on a minimum. I can go so I looked for them to add 1, maybe 2 pieces of veteran depth that could potentially get bought out. So I'm not worried about their depth this season. That's not what I'm worried about. It's more of like a long-term depth. But with those guys, it's going to be a problem.
But you got to worry about their depth.
Have to.
I'm saying, but I truly believe that Phoenix is going to be one of those places that when those veterans
but those
get bought out,
players never end up really impacting.
But
listen, RJ, you talk about the buyout market, but you got to see what's on the shelf. You got to see what's on the shelf. If you go and buy things, you got to see what's available. You got to, like, Jay Crowder just went to the Bucks. It's not too many vets that's out there that you could just say, oh, the buyout market, they're gonna make me that much better if I go and pick them up. Like, we're not like the Phoenix Suns gave up a lot.
A lot. And they got a lot.
They got a lot in Kevin Durant. I agree. I agree. But when I look at overall, not just in the West, when I look at Boston, when I look at Milwaukee,
Denver,
they got Denver. But just think of Boston and just stop at Milwaukee for a second. Giannis, Chris Middleton, Joe Ingles, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez. That's another guy that when we bring up the Bucks, for some reason, just because of Giannis and his dominance on the offensive end and defensive end, it gets overshadowed by what Brook Lopez brings to the table.
So if we're talking about the East, we've looked at the West side of things, and the West is absolutely bonkers now. It is bananas. Kyrie Irving in the West. Kevin Durant in the West. I mean,
Lakers better.
The Lakers got better.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.